So how did I take 2 minutes off my half marathon PB? There were 3 pieces to the puzzle, 3 vital ingredients in the recipe for success, and I'd like to share them with you today. Let's chat. Hi there, I'm Chris, dad of Benny and Sam, and a journalist who loves nothing more than cutting through the marketing hype to tell it like it really is. And on the weekend, I ran the incredibly beautiful Melbourne Half Marathon. And I have run a lot of half marathons in the past, but this one was different. This one was unique. How was it different? Well, this time I smashed my PB by 2 minutes, and this is my PB from the last 10 years, not my PB from back when I was 19 years old. So that in itself was a brilliant result for me. I was thrilled to bits. I also felt better than ever at the end of the run, despite the increased pace. And amazingly, I also felt better than ever during the run. I ran most of this half marathon with a great big smile on my face. So what did I do differently? Well, there were 3 things that I did differently, and one of them involves these lovely shoes. More on that later. But number 1 was being very clear about the purpose of this specific event. I've run the Melbourne Half Marathon 2 or 3 times before. Each time I've run it with my wife, and we've run it almost as tourists. We've essentially run it at our own pace. We've talked about what we're seeing. We've enjoyed the view. We've enjoyed looking around. The course really is very beautiful on the Melbourne Half Marathon. And therefore, that run has had more of a social, relaxed, touristy kind of a vibe to it, a different sort of purpose. But I decided before this training block began that I was going to go for a specific time. I was going to try and break my 10-year PB. And so that in itself had a massive influence on my training program and also on what I wore on the day of the event. So that was really important, first of all, to develop a really good understanding of what I wanted to do or what I wanted to achieve in this particular event. Because having that defined nice and early then influences everything else that happens from then on. Number 2 was the preparation itself. And this is where things get a little bit surprising. During the 12-week lead up to a normal half marathon, I would typically do 4 to 5 training runs every single week. But this time, rather than training more and training harder, I decided to cut that back to 3 runs per week. Now, this wasn't necessarily me being smart and knowing what to do. It was the fact that I've had some ankle problems and I didn't want to overdo any of my training. And I am often the guy who turns up to an event either very sore or slightly injured because I have overtrained. I've tried to train too well rather than wisely. So restricting myself to 3 runs a week gave me time to recover really well in between each run. So what did that look like? Essentially each week had a long run, an easy/recovery run, and a fast/interval run. That was it. Long run, easy run, fast session. I used the Runna app this time. I've never used it before, and I did enjoy it, mainly because I'm a bit lazy and I like the way that it integrated with my Garmin watch and made everything very simple. But you can use whatever you want. You might want to devise your own training plan, or even go to some sort of AI platform and get that to spit something out for you and then personalize that to your own needs. I also went to ChatGPT to help me devise a specific race plan, a plan for race day. And that was another incredibly important ingredient in the recipe for success. That's because I'm usually the guy who starts way too fast and therefore finishes way too slow. And once again, I think a lot of us are like that, right? Well, this time I had a very strict plan that I decided that I was going to stick to, and that involves running negative splits, which people always tell you is the best thing to do, but very few of us ever do it. And for me, having run perhaps 30, 40 half marathons in the past, I have never ever run negative splits before. What does negative splits mean? Essentially, it means you start slower so that you have the energy to end faster. I went to ChatGPT and it helped me develop a plan. And I want to show you that plan. Please don't laugh at my pace. Remember, I'm 55 years old. So here it is. The first 7 kilometers were to be run at about 5 minutes, 10 seconds per kilometer. And actually during the event, I was constantly getting myself to slow down during that first 7 kilometers, which relaxed me and actually added to the enjoyment of the event itself. The next 6 kilometers sped up just a little to 5 minutes a kilometer. Then there was 4 kilometers. at 4 minutes 50 per kilometre, and finally 4 kilometres at 4:45 per kilometre. And it worked beautifully. During the final 3 or 4 kilometers, I felt as if I could comfortably run as fast as I wanted to. For some of the final 3 or 4 kilometers, I was actually sprinting. That's how comfortable I felt during those final parts of the event, as opposed to every single other half marathon I've ever run, where in those final 4 or 5 kilometers, I've felt like I'm fighting for survival. The plan that ChatGPT helped me with, if I stuck to it precisely, would mean that I'd beat my 10-year PB by 1 minute. But actually on the day I stayed slightly faster than the paces that I had been set, and therefore beat the PB by 2 minutes. And I felt relatively fresh at the end of the event. And by the way, before we get to the shoes, if any of this helps you, or if you'd like to make sure that you catch further content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps our little channel a lot. Thank you so much. And so finally, the vital ingredient number 3 to the recipe for success was what I wore on race day. Knowing the event's purpose means that I could ensure that everything I was wearing and fueling with and carrying with me suited that purpose. So, for example, in past events when my wife and I have run this particular Melbourne Half Marathon together, almost as tourists, I've worn long tights, I've worn comfy high-stack shoes like Superblast 2s. I've worn long-sleeved running shirts. I've even worn running gloves because the Melbourne Half Marathon is typically very cold. It's between freezing and about 6 degrees Celsius. And for that more relaxed type of a run, I would probably take one gel with me rather than several. I focused a lot more on how what I was wearing and fueling with would help my pace. So I tested several race shoes before deciding on the one to go with. And I will link to that video in the description below. That process led to me deciding on these awesome Puma Fast-R Nitro Elite 3s. I also wore a pair of short running tights instead of long ones. I wore a t-shirt instead of long sleeve shirt, and I didn't wear anything else, no gloves, no beanie, anything else like that, because I wanted to be encouraged to run fast enough to keep my body warm. The Fast-R 3s were exceptional over the half marathon distance. And actually, having just done the half marathon in them, I would very happily take these to full marathon distance as well. My calves afterwards were fine, but I do have fairly strong calves. My ankles are made of cheese, but I do have very strong calves. So these shoes I know are not for everybody. Several of you have mentioned to me in the past that these, after a long run, leave your calves feeling shredded and you need several days to recover. So they are definitely not for everybody. Please take my experience with a large grain of salt or with a large anti-inflammatory tablet. I also land very much on my midfoot to forefoot. But if you tend to land on your heel, then I'd say these shoes are most definitely not for you. But for me, the almost unbelievably energetic foam in the Fast-R 3s, as well as the very steeply sloping carbon plate, very, very stiff, solid carbon plate, and finally that lovely little kicker out the front of the nose of the shoe, combine to make fast running almost effortless. They really are an excellent race day shoe. For me at least. And so I was absolutely thrilled with the outcome of my recent half marathon. The secrets to my success, once again, were knowing and defining the purpose of the event really early on before your training block even begins. Preparing by training less rather than more each week, giving your body time to recover, and ensuring that I had a sensible race plan which involved starting slow so I could finish fast. And finally, testing and wearing the right stuff to match the race's purpose. So I hope that helps you prep for your next event. My next one is in November, another half marathon, and because of this one that I've just done, I am absolutely looking forward to it. I've got lots of shoe reviews and training news coming up, so please do like and subscribe if you don't want to miss out. Have a fantastic week, run well, I'll see you soon.